Now, before you see anything physically, you do so through these inner pathways. The interior perception activates the outside one. When you experience physical motion or activity, events or phenomena, you are becoming aware of the tail end of a long quote-unquote series of interior comprehensions. I am saying that all exterior events, including your own bodies with their insides, all objects, all physical materializations, are the outside structures of inside ones that are composed of interior sound and invisible light, interwoven in electromagnetic patterns. Beneath temporal perception, then, each object and event exists in these terms, in patterns that interact with each other. On a physical level, you seem to be separated from everything that is not yourself. This is not true, but in your day-to-day existence it seems to be, and it is an assumption that you usually take for granted. On the interior level of which I have been speaking, all happenings and objects are connected. A movement or change in one affects others. You will physically respond to and recognize some of this alteration, as in the example of the near accident. But whether or not you are consciously aware of such activity, it changes the interior environment of your body through these inner pathways. Your own thoughts and beliefs, having the same kind of inner reality, also transform the interior environment of others. The near accident mentioned was a physical event, but it was initially a mental one. It existed in this non-temporal reality then before, in your terms, it was physically materialized, perceived, and reacted to. It was propelled from inner reality to outward reality through belief, emotion, and imagination. Because you cannot see them, it may seem to you that these qualities are not as real, say, as an object. Physically, you can only see the results of an emotion, for instance. You cannot hold it in your hands as you can a stone. Ideas represent your psychic intent. They generate emotion and imagination. These activate the interior patterns. They are the motive force of action, the means by which all interior events are exteriorized. They are energy, formed and directed, formulations of interior and exterior patterns of reality. They are a part of the creative force from which all realities spring. Again, we run into difficulties in explanation simply because there are few verbal equivalents for what I am trying to say. Imagination and emotions are the most concentrated forms of energy that you possess as physical creatures. Any strong emotion carries within it far more energy than, say, that required to send a rocket to the moon. Emotions, instead of propelling a physical rocket, for example, send thoughts from this interior reality through the barrier between non-physical and physical into the quote-unquote objective world, no small feat, and one that is constantly repeated. The physically alive body, its activities and condition, are directed through the beliefs of the conscious mind. The body, as explained in this chapter, also has quote-unquote invisible counterparts composed of the electromagnetic properties and the interior sound and light qualities. These invisible structures preceded the emergence of the physical body. They also exist after the body's death. While the conditions of the body is directed by the conscious mind in life, then, the idea or mental pattern for the body existed before the conscious mind's connection with the physical brain. The genes and chromosomes do not just happen to have within them the precisely definite coded information that will be needed. The data is impressed upon them from within. The identity exists before the form. You could say that the identity, existing in another dimension entirely, plants the seed into the medium of physical reality from which its own material existence will spring. Therefore, the inner self forms first the quote-unquote invisible body structure, which will quote-unquote later emerge in flesh. At the event of this mental seeding, the conscious mind, in your terms, is obviously not connected with the brain, which has not yet been formed in flesh. The idea of the body is held and made physical by a conscious mind. Consciousness, then, is not dependent upon physical perception, though this attribute does require an awareness immersed within a material form. While physical consciousness is sifted through the bodily apparatus, you are usually unaware of non-corporeal kinds of that process. The general framework, properties, and characteristics of the body exist, therefore, before its formation. In simple terms, you choose ahead of time the kind of body you will inhabit and impress. It may seem to you that you do not have any conscious control over your body's conditions in life as you know it, much less before your birth. You have been taught that there is little connection between your thought and your body's activities. A man believing he has heart trouble will finally, through his own anxiety, affect the functioning of his quote-unquote involuntary system, until his heart is definitely harmed if the belief goes unchecked. The conscious mind directs the so-called involuntary systems of the body, and not the other way around. No idea slips insidiously past your awareness to affect your involuntary system, unless it fits in with your own conscious beliefs. Once more, you will not be sick if you think you are well, but there may be other ideas that make you believe in the necessity for poor health. You are not aware of how the body performs its many involuntary functions. The conscious mind could not handle all this data, but those functions perfectly mirror your consciously held ideas and beliefs. As I mentioned, the conscious mind is not basically cut off from the inner self or from those deep inner sources of knowledge available to it. The aware mind is not any one event for that matter. It represents various portions of the inner self that quote-unquote surface at any given time. Within the basic framework of the body chosen before physical birth, the reasons that will be discussed later, the individual has full freedom to create a perfectly healthy functioning form. The form is, however, a mirror of beliefs, and will accurately materialize in flesh those ideas held by the conscious mind. That is one of the body's primary functions. A sick body is performing that function then in its way as well as a healthy one. It is your most intimate feedback system, changing with your thought and experience, giving you in flesh the physical counterpart of your thought. So it is futile to become angry at a symptom or to deride the body for its condition when it is presenting you with the corporeal replica of your own thought, as it was meant to do. Your environment and your experience in the physical world also provide you with the same kind of feedback. It is just as useless to berate your environment or your experience in it as it is to deride your body for the same reasons. It often seems, when such ideas as these are presented, that the ideal results in your terms would be perfection, quote-unquote heaven on earth, a state in which everyone would be healthy, wealthy, and wise. You are, however, in physical existence using your body as a medium for learning and expression. You are each unique. Many of you, for your own reasons, pursue courses that do not involve an even development of abilities, an overall balanced picture, for example, but choose to express and experiment with certain qualities to the exclusion of others. Such a course would not, in physical reality, present you with anything like a balanced picture of perfection. Later in the book, we will discuss other kinds of existence in which you are also involved, and these to some extent color your intents and purposes in physical life as you now understand it. If all of your beliefs, not just your quote-unquote fortunate ones, were not materialized, you would never thoroughly understand on a physical level that your ideas create reality. If only your quote-unquote positive beliefs were materialized, then you would never clearly comprehend the power of your thought, for you would not completely experience its physical results. The conscious mind exists before material life and after it. In corporeal existence, it is intertwined with the brain, and during physical life, your earthly perceptions, your precise and steady focus within your particular space and time system, are dependent upon that fine alliance. Before physical birth, then, you form a mental concept of the body you will have. The image is impressed into matter in this way. You tune yourself into a highly specific dimension of reality. You form a physical structure that will have existence within that intensely concentrated area, that will have validity and actuality, that will come alive within those quote-unquote frequencies. Now it is here that the seeming division of the self occurs, for in physical life the conscious mind must be connected with the brain, and in terms of time that organ itself must grow and develop. So all of your consciousness cannot be physically aware. The portion that must quote-unquote wait for the brain's development is the part you call in life, quote-unquote, the conscious mind. The other portions can be called the inner self. Now, all of this inner self cannot be expressed even with its connection with the brain, since the brain must sift its perception through the physical apparatus. The brain, with its bodily connections, must deal with the time lapses that sensual perceptions always imply. The interior workings of the body, to be conscious, would have to deal with time sequences that that would present the physically attuned consciousness with quote-unquote mathematical deductions and calculations far too numerous for it to handle. For example, it would have to keep conscious track of all the muscles, nerves, organs, cells, molecules, and atoms, while manipulating the body in space and time. Therefore, a seeming division occurs, in which a portion of the invisible conscious mind is connected with the physical brain, and a portion of it is free from that connection. That latter part forms what you think of as the involuntary system of the body. Again, it is important that you realize the initial non-physical reaction to stimuli that sparks off all physical reactions. There is constant interplay and communication between the areas of consciousness that are connected to the brain and those that are not. The quote-unquote deeper purposes of the consciousness involved quote-unquote circulate, sometimes arising in the awareness that is joined with the brain. Information coming from those deeper sources of the self, reaching the areas connected to the brain, will be interpreted according to the beliefs of that most physically focused segment of the self. To some degree, such inner data will be colored by the current beliefs of that part of the self most directly confronting the physical world. Those beliefs, however, are also constantly being examined by the inner self.